Well, so how's it going for you guys, and how's it been for you guys throughout the pandemic? And it's still kind of odd that we're still talking about it like a year and a half later, and you guys are still in lockdown. Am I right?
Yeah, I am. Are
Yeah,
you?
my state's lockdown is slowly kind of easing now. I think we've hit like 80% double vaccination in my state. And so anyone who's fully double vaxxed can
Go out.
kind of live life relatively normally.
Mhm.
So it's getting there. I think we'll hit 90% in the next few weeks, hopefully, and that's when they're like, we'll take all the restrictions off and stuff. So, but I'm pretty much at home all the time anyway, so it hasn't affected me that much. But yeah, we're slowly coming out of it.
Nice. What about you, Rowan? Like, are you far away from like Freedom Day?
Yeah, I think this Thursday night we lose our perimeter restrictions because we've got like 15K perimeter we can't go past, and I think restaurants and stuff start to open up and whatnot. So yeah, I think we get a lot of freedoms from Thursday night, which is good. I'm looking forward to that. I'm kind of done with this life, to be honest.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I think they're like for musicians, I think there's like a mixed crowd where some like Jake, they say that they are home most of the time anyway, so it doesn't really make a lot of difference. But then to some, it's like they're really looking forward to go out. Even if they don't go out, it's like just the idea of having that option to go out.
Yeah,
It just makes you feel so much better.
100%.
Yeah, so like, but then like throughout this like 18 months or so, how's it been for you guys musically? Did you guys feel like the pandemic actually gave you guys a boost like musically, or did it not really make a difference for you guys?
I think it helped me. I think it got me thinking about things to do and projects to work on, for sure.
Yeah, same. I think not having any tours on the horizon kind of made me go, oh, I can spend as much time as I want actually working on things and trying to get stuff done. So I know for some people it's very uninspiring to suddenly be in lockdown. But for me, it was like, oh, I don't have to feel bad about spending all my time sitting at the computer working on music. You know what I mean? When you can go outside, there's a kind of like, oh, I should probably go out, or I should probably go somewhere or do something. When you don't have the option, it's like at least you feel okay about sitting at the computer making music constantly.
That's true. I actually saw a meme. They said like, for once it's like the kids have an excuse to game all day, and it would literally save lives. Yeah, that's kind of funny as well. Well, that's good. So then, like, speaking of music, then obviously I'm a bit late to the party, but congratulations on your joint EP. And so what was that always in the planning, or was that a result of the pandemic as well?
We've known each other for probably almost over a decade now, and we've always gotten along quite well. And back 3 or 4 years ago now, one time because I live in Sydney, he lives in Melbourne. So one time when I was down in Melbourne and I was staying at Rose's house, we just kind of decided to write a song together on the spot, and that was a lot of fun. And we put that out, and I think, I can't remember who brought it up, but at some point a few years back, one of us would have said, we should definitely actually do a full thing at some point, like spend the time and the money and make a real release happen. And then the pandemic hit, and it was kind of like, well, now's the time to do it. You know what I mean? So it's been on the cards for a while, but actually sitting down to get it done was kind of the pandemic's fault, I think, because we both had the time and both could devote like our brains to it.
For sure.
Nice. Then yeah, I kind of thought so, because like the pandemic definitely pushed many of us to do something that we've always wanted to do, but then like never really had time to do, because obviously like musicians, you guys are always on tour. I think I saw Rowan just before the pandemic in London, I think with Monuments as well, and I think that was one of your last shows, right? The London show before.
Yeah, that was the last show. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, that was a really good one as well. Damn. Well,
Yeah.
at least it ended with a bang before the pandemic. It was
Yeah,
a
good one
really
to
good
end on.
show.
Definitely.
Nice. Well, so then speaking of the EP, how different was it in terms of experience when it came to writing together as two people as opposed to writing as individual artists? Rowan, do you want to go first?
Yeah, the benefits is just bouncing off each other's energies and that sort of thing, and discussing things, which is really, I had a lot of that going on before I started this project in different bands. I was in various bands for many years, so I had that. The experience was very normal, and it was good. But I got to a point where I wanted to try things on my own and just see what I could do myself, and sort of make all the decisions and stuff like that. So I do enjoy that. And then but doing something like this with Jake, there's a whole new energy, because you've got someone to discuss stuff and bounce off, and it's just acts like it's a great vibe. So I think me and Jake, we sort of musically were on very similar pages, and that's just real good fun. Like, it's fun to do. So I really enjoyed that about this project.
Yeah, it was a really good experience to kind of actually in real time go back and forth, because we were like doing it via Skype and Zoom and stuff like that. And a lot of the time in the past when I've written with people, it's been like, I'm going to work on this idea here, and then I'm going to send it to you, and you'll come back to me in a few days with another idea or with an edit on what I've done. And this was kind of like, all right, we've got these few basic ideas to start, and now we're going to sit here until we actually come up with how this song should go and what's good. And that kind of real-time back and forth is something I haven't really done that much, or at least not for a long time. Not since my like teenage band jamming in a room kind of thing. And so that was really interesting. And I think it kind of, for some of the stuff, it changed what I would naturally write, or how I would naturally approach what I would write. Having someone right there to, I mean, not only not being able to go into the same level of stupid detail that I might go if I had hours and hours sitting on my own going, no, that's not perfect. You know what I mean? It kind of made some of the ideas a little more organic, and having someone else there to just change them on the fly, or come up with something on the fly was really interesting.
Oh, nice. Well, that's good to know, because like obviously sometimes it's a bit difficult, especially as independent and individual artists, to work with other artists, because you sort of on most days you have full control of what you want to do, but of course on most days you also don't know what to do because you're writing on your own, and then you got to sort of figure out everything on your own. So I think it's really cool that you guys had that sort of chemistry where you guys have really vibe off each other, and then would maybe offer each other sort of different solutions to songwriting, like you mentioned, Jake. Like you've taken approaches that you wouldn't typically take on your own. So that's kind of nice. But was it at any point difficult, or it was like just all chill and all like good the whole time? Because obviously it's really extreme when it comes to. I mean, it's two very different things to write on your own and to write with someone, and then obviously when you write with someone, you have to sort of compromise. Did any of it feel like a compromise, or maybe did any part of it feel like a compromise at first, and then after that you listen back to it, you're like, oh wow, actually we did something great, and I wouldn't have done anything like that on my own? Did events like that happen in the process?
Yeah, I didn't feel like it's a compromise. It's just getting the best. It's just sort of like working together. So yeah, I think you can't have that attitude going into something like this. You got to be open, and you got to bring the vibes, and flow along with the process and stuff like that. And yeah, so I didn't feel any of that going on. It was just inspiring, really. And then yeah,
I also think we started out as fans of each other. Like, someone showed Ro a Helix Nebula thing, and I'd already seen I Built the Sky YouTube videos or something back in like 2011, 2012, something like that. And so we both naturally like each other's music and the things we write. So it's like if I was going into something with someone who it's like, I don't know anything this person's written before, and I just know they're a musician, let's see how we go. There's the chance for those conflicts to come up, but we already kind of, I assume, pretty much like everything the other one does usually, you know what I mean? So it's like when Ro would come to me with an idea, I'd be like, that's sick. I like that. I can work with that. You know what I mean? There wasn't really any, especially during the writing, there was no point where I at all felt like, no, that idea is not good enough, or I'm not happy with that. You know what I mean? It was always just like, oh, there's another idea. Let's use it. Let's go with it. It's funny that I feel like there were very, very few things left on the cutting room floor. It's like, I don't remember us going, here's an idea, and then going, nah, that didn't quite work how we wanted it. You know what I mean? It was almost always, here's an idea. Yep, that's cool. Let's just put that in here and go with it. You know what I mean? So it felt very organic and flowed really well.
Nice. I think that the fact that you guys got to do it in real time really helped, as opposed to like how some of us would do it, where we record something and we send over and then like keep our fingers crossed and hope the other party likes it, and then sort of worry about what they'll say, whether they like it or not, after we spend like all day doing it. So I think, like you said, the real time thing really made a difference, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah, because everything's just out in the open, and you don't spend too much time on an idea that maybe the other person's not fond of, or rather in your case, you guys sort of, because you guys got to discuss it in real time, you guys were like assured by the other party that, oh, actually this is something we can work with. So then you sort of have the confidence to build on whatever you guys just suggested.
Yeah, I also think the experience of both of us having written with people in the past to some extent, having that experience definitely helps, because it's like there's a certain skill to taking someone's idea and hearing it in your own musical voice, if that makes sense. Like Ro hearing one of my ideas and going, I can see how that works with the music I hear in my head, or me hearing one of his and vice versa. Like that's a skill that I don't think necessarily happens naturally. And you really need to have gone through this process of writing with someone and being in a situation where you do have to make compromises. You know what I mean? Like, I think one of the reasons we didn't really have to compromise on anything was because we both know how to interpret and see someone else's idea in our own musical world, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that was really important, because I think that was the whole point of collaborating anyway, because you wouldn't want it to sound one-sided in a way. You want it to sound like a Ro and Jake sort of thing, you know, rather than either one, of course. Okay, well, speaking of songwriting, then is there a standard process that, you know, a song or album has to go through from conception to completion? So because everyone starts a song differently, so how do you guys do it? I mean, you can talk about how you guys did it together, or you guys can talk about how you guys do it as individuals, or we could talk about both, like together and also as individuals.
Well, for this project, to start with, basically we had a few riffs of our own sort of floating around, and they would start the seed of the song. So we'd come together and be like, all right, well, I've got this riff and this riff, I think go together or something. And then we're like, all right, cool. And then we would sort of discuss where we could take it from there, and, you know, try and sculpt the structure and the form of the song, and be like, all right, well, you know, this could be a solo section here, and maybe we need a bit where everything falls away, you know, try and think about the structure of the song as we're going. So I think that was pretty instinctive to both of us. But yeah, just starting off with someone's riff or melody or something would get the ball rolling, and then we just sort of go at it together.
Yeah, every song had at least one riff from either of us kind of like already there. I think I had two, two ideas for songs and Ro had two ideas for songs, and then it was kind of like, here's this information, what would you do with it, you know what I mean? And went, yeah, like Ro said, went back and forth from there. And once, I mean, I think we ended up doing something like 5, maybe 6, but I think 5 Skype calls or Zoom calls, and each one was probably somewhere in the realm of 3 hours long, maybe. And at the end of every Zoom call, we basically had a song done. So it was pretty quick from a idea and structuring standpoint. And so then it was kind of like, okay, we can now do the classic send back and forth sessions and files and all that kind of stuff, and refine everything, add layers, all that kind of stuff. But the core of the song was pretty much done by the end of each Zoom session. So it always was like, here's the seed. Let's work on it for 3 hours and hope we have something that's passable by the end of it.
I reckon Ataraxia, which is like the classical piece that comes before Ascendant, is another example of maybe differing from that, where I sort of had this melody, very simple, like 2-chord melody thing, and it really was nothing. And I sort of showed Jake, I'm like, we could maybe use this for something. And Jake took like the chords and just really fucking went hard on arranging like this like orchestral sort of thing, and really changed the entire vibe by adding these new chord changes and stuff, just advancing it up. It was crazy. And then I remember I was recording an acoustic thing somewhere, and he sent me this file of like this song really fleshed out with all this orchestration and shit. And I'm like, damn, all right. I did not expect that to come from this tiny piano thing that I initially had, you know, written down.
Yeah, and as like, I really enjoy composing and writing music, but as pretty much anyone who does it knows, the first initial idea is always the hardest. Like, having the spark of something that you think is worthwhile is so tricky to find compared to like arranging a song or whatever, you know what I mean? Once you're arranging, it's like, okay, the information's there, I just have to find the right way to articulate it. And so having Ro's little piano piece was kind of like, it took the hard part out of it for me, because I didn't have to think blank canvas, pull something out of midair, you know what I mean? It was like, I hear this, how can I work this into my context that makes sense to me? And I love orchestral music and video game soundtracks and all that kind of thing. And so I instantly was like, I can hear that. That's a thing that we can do. And then I kind of changed some of the chords a little bit and then arranged strings and stuff around it. I'm quite an amateur when it comes to that stuff. And so I've got a friend, Jake Wilson, amazing guitarist from the UK, who happens to be a remarkable classical and orchestral arranger. And so he very kindly said, yeah, I'm happy to rearrange it so it sounds like a real orchestra. And so it's arranged properly, and it has real dynamics and tempo changes and all that kind of stuff. And so he is a large secret as to why that track actually ended up being as good as it is. But yeah, having the idea there originally and then being able to kind of bridge that into that orchestral world was a lot of fun.
I find it interesting how that ended up, because if it was left to me, it would have been so different for the absolute detriment of this track, because I would have done like some sort of minimalism sort of thing with layering and stuff. No orchestral, just because it's, you know, my natural instinct. So to see where that ended up, I'm like, yes, that was a good move there.
Yeah, and I guess it's all down to, like I said, your own context and your own experience of what you have listened to and have written before.
Totally.
Because like I hear like stuff like Jake Bowen's latest electronic album and stuff, and I'm just blown away, because I'm just like, how the hell do you write like this minimalist electronic stuff and make it sound cool and produce it really well? I've just got no idea. But when it comes to like orchestral, I instantly hear things, you know what I mean? And I'm like, yep, that's cool. That's cool. Because I've just been immersed in it for quite a while. So it's interesting how your influence and your experience shapes, I guess, how you could hear any idea.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, like you said, I think it's your own exposure that really sort of affects the way you perceive things and how you hear a riff. Like, you know, someone would just play like a C minor chord, for example, and then 10 different individuals will think of 10 different things to do with it.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to what sort of background you are as a musician and what sort of music you're exposed to, isn't it?
Totally.
And probably your mood at the time and stuff as well, right?
Yep.
That's true. Yeah, I think what you feel at that point really makes a difference as well. Like, because it really, the energy you put into what you write is very different, because you can't really force yourself to write a happy tune. I mean, you can, but then it's actually a bit more difficult to force yourself to write a happy tune when you're actually feeling the complete opposite, isn't it?
Yeah, I think a large part of it also comes down to like general temperament, like who you are as a person in general. I always think of an example as being like Pliny is such a like optimistic and laid back person, and that comes through in all the music he writes, no matter if it's dark or happy or like emotional. It's always this uplifting thing, and it comes through him as a person. And so I think just generally your temperament has such a massive impact on the kind of thing you write, you know what I mean? And obviously some people have stronger, I guess, single elements, and some people are more kind of diverse and have those shifting parts of themselves, whether it's like the super uplifting optimistic thing or it's like the angry dark evil thing. You're gonna have sides to yourself. Every person's different like that, but I think that has a huge impact on the kind of way you write and the things that come out.
Yeah, definitely. I think the music versus the music you write always has to do with your own personality, your own temperament. Like Pliny is a really good example. I mean, you look at him, you think chill, and that's really what that's the sort of vibe you get from his music, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys find that like I do totally get that as well, but there's something about like super heavy bands, and they're generally like the sweetest, kindest people, and they write the most fucked up shit.
Yeah, I feel like that the way I've always thought about that, because I used to write lots of deathcore and heavy stuff, and I feel like for the people that write that kind of stuff, that's really a way of processing that side of themselves, if that makes sense. Like any anger or stress or whatever, writing music like that is such a great processing tool for that kind of emotion, because once you've expressed it like that, you've got no room for it in your day-to-day life, you know what I mean? It's like you're right, so many people in really heavy bands are super nice because I think they've found a way to export that emotion and side of themselves into an artistic endeavor, and then it's like it doesn't have to be part of their day-to-day self, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I always say, like, the metal community is, has like one of the kindest people in it, and like, you may be dressed up all black, all goth makeup, black nails, like piercings here and stuff, but then when you see a puppy, you're like, oh.
Yeah, exactly. It's also like that. Yeah, it's also like, I think the whole community vibe, it's like people who listen to alternative music of any kind generally feel like slight outsiders as compared to even writing prog metal, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not like we're a mainstream genre. The niche is growing, but it's like, I think a lot of people who are in these niches kind of really identify with the community that develops, which is why everyone, I mean, you're always going to get outliers, but it's why a lot of people are so lovely and nice to everyone around them, because it's like, when you see someone else who likes the stuff you like, it's like, wow, there's not many people in the world comparatively who like the stuff I like, and so I feel a deep connection to that person straight away. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that sense of community like makes us, I think that's that sense of belonging, no? Like being a part of something that's bigger than ourselves, something that we all share. And I think that's what's beautiful about music in general. You know, obviously, like you said,
Totally.
with metal, the circle is way smaller compared to music that's a bit more commercial. Maybe that's why it's even sweeter for us, because the community is much smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Really.
Well, so talking about meaning, so when it comes to songwriting, does the meaning of a song come first, or does a riff come first? Because some people, they just noodle on the guitar and then they hear something nice and then they keep it as an idea and then they develop it into something that has a meaning. Or do you start with like an intent where, okay, I'm going to write this, say for example, this love song, for example, and then you start to write something along to sort of suit that theme. How does it start for you guys, or is it just random?
For me, it's like more trying to get feeling, like some sort of feeling across, like an inspiring kind of vibe, or motivating, or like just fun, or interesting, or like twisting and making you like setting up someone to hear something and then taking it the other way, and just giving feeling across. So that's sort of how I sort of approach it. I'm not like thinking about, generally like, a story of an alien, changing planets or something, but that's just me.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I definitely, as I'm writing, don't have any thought to like message or purpose of the song or anything. Like my first and foremost priority in my head is what sounds good. You know what I mean? Like, what sounds cool to me. And like when I break that down, it's like that to me is actually kind of like what Rose said. You're like, when I'm inspired by a song, it's like I get some kind of emotional response to that. And when I'm stupidly saying what sounds cool in my head, what I'm really saying is, how do I recreate the emotional response that I had to this song that I like? You know what I mean? Where Rose said like, or an inspiring or uplifting or whatever, that's probably just a natural abstract response to hearing something you like. And then the whole thing of composing to me is trying to find how you can recreate that emotion or feeling or whatever through sound, if that makes sense. So I'm definitely not intentionally going, I need to sit down and write the sad song now. And I don't think I'm even consciously going, I need to, like, I'm not consciously saying to myself, I need to write an uplifting song next. You know what I mean? It's purely just, what is something I'm inspired by? How did I feel from that? And can I recreate that in my own thing? And does it sound cool? You know what I mean? That's the priority. So meaning comes later to me. Like if there's any meaning to a song or any cohesion to a release or like whatever, that all comes after the fact when you look in hindsight to how it all kind of turned out.
Nice. Also, then like the riffs eventually evolve into giving the meaning. I mean, giving you meaning on their own, rather than you trying to force a meaning into a song. You let it happen naturally, which is also an interesting approach.
Totally.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, so like from both your personal point of views, what sort of quality does a song need to have before you say it's finally ready to go? For example, because like like Rose said earlier, for your song, if you approach your song the way you would typically approach, you would probably go for something that's minimalist, but then the song ended up completely different in the end. So in your case, what is too little and what is too much, and what's enough and what's good enough for the public, or what's good in what makes you say is that a song is good enough before it goes to the public?
You give up, and then you're like, okay, that's what it is. Basically, like you just basically take it as far as you feel like you can go. Like, I think that's really just how it is for me. Like, Yeah, you know, because like if you listen through a song and nothing stands out to you as needing to be fixed or changed or added or taken away, then you're done.
That's a really good way of putting it. I think that's how I kind of think of it. It's like, you know, I don't know if you know like the old Metal Gear Solid games where there's like the little shock thing when you get caught, like it's a stealth game, and when people like when the enemy sees you, there's like a sound, that like a shock sound. And in my head, whenever I'm listening to a song that I'm writing, if something like that goes off, I'm like, I need to change that. Like there's something is stuck out to me. It's like when I hear something that just for whatever reason doesn't feel the right way or doesn't flow smooth enough, or there's a note that just sticks out to me as not being correct, a little signal goes off in my head and I'm like, okay, need to fix that, because I need to be able to listen through. Like I almost need to be able to detach and listen to it as a listener to let go of it, if that makes sense. And I think, like for me, the goal is to, and I don't think I necessarily ever reach the goal, but the goal is to write music that is better than all the music I love. You know what I mean? Because if you're not aiming for that, what's the point of doing it? Like, what's the point of creating music if you can already, if you're already satisfied with the music you listen to? You know what I mean? I want to write music that is the perfect music for me, if that makes sense. It's like a totally selfish endeavor, but that's what it is. And so I think if you aim for that, like when I listen through a song I've written and it's fully done, I have to be like, okay, well, I might not have hit that lofty goal of like better than all the other music I've ever heard, but at least to me, for what it is, it's as good as I can imagine it being. You know what I mean? So it doesn't have to be the best music ever, but for what it is specifically that you're working on at the time, it's like, I can't imagine this being any better. Like there's nothing I can think of in my head that could make this any better to myself. And that's when you know, all right, cool, someone's going to like it. Maybe not a lot of people, but if I like it that much, surely someone else will like it.
Oh, definitely. You know what else? You know what happens to most people if you're like, you know, with a label and stuff like that, you have to let it go at a certain deadline, you know, which where thankfully I don't live in that world. And I would struggle to cope under those conditions. But yeah, that's probably a lot of people's realities too. And you hear people talk about their albums and they're like, oh, we you know, we had to throw it in and we wanted to fix stuff and we wanted to change stuff. But and usually to us, it's like, oh, what would you change? It's fucking amazing. Like, yeah.
I think it's also why a lot of artists kind of stagnate though. You see a lot of artists get past 2 albums and then it's like, okay, well, they're successful and on a label now and they have to have another album in 2 years, but 2 years might not be long enough for them to mature as musicians or for them to decompress from the last release and find new things that are interesting. So it's like you get to that 3rd album and suddenly it starts sounding a lot like the 2nd album and suddenly the 4th one sounds a lot like the 2nd album. You know what I mean? And they have to put these things out and you end up just relying on your like muscle memory of how you can write a song. But if you're not adding anything new to it, I think it's not going to be on the same level as the thing you did before, because I guess especially for progressive music and metal and stuff, it's all about trying to do something new and to some extent and trying to make it sound good in a way you haven't necessarily done before. So yeah, I think that's a problem that a lot of artists on labels face, but luckily we can take as long as we want.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, just to build on that, it's like, I think Misha from Periphery actually mentioned before, he said that, you know, if they stuck to a label, the band would have taken a completely different direction altogether because they were sort of told what to do and things like that. And that's just not who they are. And as musicians, and I think that is really the case with a lot of modern day musicians, as opposed to musicians back in the day where obviously exposure was less, and then the labels would literally tell them, okay, you need to do this in order to grow, to reach the audience you want. And so therefore, not to say they're restricted, but then they were sort of guided to write a specific way. and to release a certain amount of songs within a certain amount of time in order to get the best results, you know. But now I think we just live in a completely different world where we have all the tools we need to produce our own music, and all the exposure we need, because everything's just literally on the internet. You know, you can learn anything. You can learn how to play the guitar, learn how to like make orchestral arrangements just by YouTubing, you know.
Pretty much.
Totally.
Yeah. So actually, like, just to wrap up on what you guys said about, you know, what makes you guys feel a song is ready to go out to the public. It reminds me of what Jakub Stecki told me before. He said, like, as long as there's nothing in the song that bothers me, and I think that says it all. That says it all, doesn't it? Like, you know, like what Jake said, that as long as there's nothing that stands out and says, oh, like, you know, that's a bit of a pain to listen to. And then I think that's when, you know, you know a song is ready to go. It feels right. Nothing needs to be changed. And I think that's when you know a song is ready to go.
And I think that's why people like us have like 300 sessions of random ideas stored on a hard drive somewhere that never see the light of day, because sometimes you get those like alerts that pop up as you're listening, and it's just too hard to find the thing that fixes it. You know what I mean? So you go, all right, well, maybe one day I'll be good enough to fix that, but I'm going to move on to the next thing for now.
Yeah, true. I think it's always good to have like that storage bank where we can sort of occasionally revisit and then see like, oh, hey, actually that was kind of cool. And now I'm sort of at this level where I think I can develop that further, because sometimes those ideas come way too early and we're not sort of mature enough to develop those, if you get what I mean.
Totally.
Definitely.
Nice. Okay, well, so now that we've covered quite a bit on songwriting, I think we can talk a bit about gear. So I think in most cases, people would start with guitars and stuff. We will eventually get to that, but I also have to be very mindful of time because I don't want to take up too much of your time. But one thing I feel that people don't talk about enough is the pick they use. I mean, I'm only talking about this now because all of us here are guitarists. So, and I feel that the pick isn't talked about often enough, because people often talk about the pickups, they talk about the guitar they use, the type of strings they use, but actually the pick does make so much difference, doesn't it? Like, so like in your case, oh yeah, what's that? Is that max grip? Is that
max grip 0.73? Yeah.
Oh, is that the tiny one?
Yeah, 0.73. So it's fairly middle of the road, sort of in, or maybe towards the lighter end for most metal guitarists and stuff. But I just started on 0.73 when I learned guitar. So I don't know. I haven't felt the need to change, and I feel like it's a good middle ground for me personally, and I can choke up on it and get, you know, different results that way. And when I strum, I don't feel like I'm going to rip the strings off. Whether a lot of the thicker picks, I feel like, man, I'm going to fucking pull the strings off this thing.
Yeah, whereas I'm just the classic shred boy with the Jazz 3 Dunlop 1mm Tortex.
How do you strum with that shit?
That's the thing. I think what part of it was that when I was young, when I was like 16 or 17, I tried so many picks just because why not? And for a while, I was using like 2mm picks, like thicker than that even. And I just got so used to it. It's like, I've never understood, like personally, I've never understood not being able to strum with a thick pick. You know what I mean? It's like, I think I just loosen the tension of how I'm holding the pick, and the pick has more give. You know what I mean? So it's never been a huge deal to me. I'm always like, I think the most important thing to me for my style of playing about a pick is having a like pretty sharp point. So I could get by with like a larger pick if I wanted, as long as the point was quite sharp. But yeah, I mean, I just kind of settled on the Tortex because I used to use the nylon Jim Dunlop, the red ones, and they were good, but I dropped them all the time. So I got the grip ones, and then then I kind of went, they just don't sound as good. Like the very nylon-y, they just have this like squidgy tone that doesn't really have the attack I want. And so I went to the Tortex, and they're kind of pretty okay for not dropping, and they have the sharp point, and that's kind of all I really care about, you know what I mean? And they have more attack than the nylon ones. So I tried out the Ultex Dunlops, and they just kind of felt a little too glassy to me. They just slid across the strings too much, didn't get the grip on the string that you can kind of get from the Tortex. So yeah.
Someone sent me one of these stone picks.
Nice.
Like, hella thick. Like,
how do you find that?
I can't use it. It would rip. I feel like it would rip the strings off because I haven't got that natural flexibility in my. Yeah. I haven't developed that, I suppose, because the picks just does the work for me when I strum, which I feel is like probably 50% of what I do.
Nice. Yeah, I think so. Like, yeah, I think having the right pick is important, and I think it's good that you guys actually found like the one for you guys. And I think it's one thing that, and you're kind of lucky in a sense, Rowan, that you actually found yours from sort of day one. And like most of, but that is so rare, because I'm sure Jake agrees that that's really rare. And it's like, for most guitarists, you always have that box of like 20 of the similar picks that you never use again. You know, you buy 20, you think that's the one, and then you end up thinking, maybe not, and then you sort of try something else. That was the case for me with the Max Grip as well. And then over time, it became too small because I've got like really sweaty fingers. So even though it has the Max Grip, that thing was literally just sliding itself away. So I in the end, I just opted for the Ultex XL, because that's big enough, and it has a pointy tip, and it doesn't wear out as quickly. But tone wise, sometimes I find myself needing to sort of change a different pick when I record, because obviously sometimes that gives you like a rounder tone, especially if you play on a 7 or 8 string, then it becomes too bassy. So do you guys actually, so speaking of that, do you guys actually change and use different picks to get different tones when you guys record, or it's just that one pick that does it all for you guys?
This one pick since I was 12. This is the only pick I own. No, I buy them in fucking bulk these days, so I just get them out of this bag, and it feels good to have a nice fresh pick. But yeah, I use the same pick no matter the circumstance every day.
Yeah, I pretty much am the same now with the Jazz 3 Tortex. Kind of, I know that people have done tone tests, testing every pick against each other, and like a bigger pick is better for chugging or whatever, and like all these different things. And I think in reality, unless like, I think the difference between I think a lot of people very much overhype, and this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but a lot of people very much overhype the differences between various things in like the amount of difference your hands makes compared to the amount of difference like the wood of your guitar or the fretboard wood, or like they do make a difference, but the percentage of your tone that is coming from that compared to like how you play and the amp you're using is so minuscule. And I think you're really, who is hearing that stuff when you've put it on your record? You know what I mean? Like no one's really going, you know what, I'm disappointed they didn't use an ash body instead of an older body. Like it's I get it. I get why people are like searching for the best tone with everything, but I think it's really got to make a sufficient amount of difference for me to actually care. And so like the difference between the nylon Jazz 3 and the Tortex Jazz 3 is actually a pretty huge tonal difference, especially for the stuff I play. So I was like, all right, that's worth it. Even though I was really comfortable using the nylons, I went, I'm going to just try the Tortex, and now I'm used to them and love them. Probably couldn't go back, but like going from a small pick to a larger pick, because the larger pick sounds the tiniest bit fatter on chugs. It's like, I'm not going to notice that, so no one else is going to notice it. You know what I mean? So I've got hundreds of these Jazz 3s lying around, and I'm just going to keep using them till the day I die.
Nice. Yeah, I think what's most important, I'm not sure if you guys agree, but then I think what feels right matters more. And then after that, you can kind of shape the tone based on like what feels most comfortable in your hand.
Totally.
Because like you said, a lot of it really comes from the way you play rather than the tool itself. Obviously, the tools make a difference, but then like a big part of it really relies on how you strum and how you hit the strings.
Yeah, and there's no point in using a bigger pick or whatever if I can't facilitate the actual things I want to play as well. You know what I mean? Like, sure, maybe it would get me a fatter tone on my long alternate picking runs, but if I can't do the long alternate picking runs with that pick as well as I can with the small pick, then what's the point? So I think for me, it's about feeling right and being able to actually execute things I want to execute, and then my new show of tone can come after that. Yeah,
that's very true. I think like the best gear is the gear that brings the best out of you, and that's like end of the story. You know, it doesn't matter what it is.
The best gear is the gear you have right now. Just use that, and unless it's inhibiting your creativity, you know, you just gotta. I heard someone say this about you know, your favorite musicians would get amazing results out of the gear you have. You know, you might feel unsatisfied with this guitar you've got and stuff like that, but your favorite musicians, they'd figure it out. They'd make it work for them. They'd get the best out of it, and the music they would create, you know, it's going to be expressive because it's them.
Yeah.
So I try to really stay out of the gear stuff these days. Personally, yeah.
And I mean, says the person who does a lot of unboxing, right?
Well, yeah,
no, I've seen.
I'm fortunate that I do get some guitars here and there, but I'm definitely I'm chilling out for sure.
Nice. Well, you've got some cool guitars. I think that the one with the stars on the fretboard, that one's probably my favorite as well. Yeah, that's the one in the silver-ish sparkle or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Nice. I think you did that came after London, was it? Because I remember you were playing the black and white one in London, if I'm not wrong, but I may have forgotten. Nice.
Yeah, I think it came after.
I think for me, like I think the way I would put it is that I love gear. Don't get me wrong. Give me 100 picks to mess around with, and I'll mess around with them. Give me every guitar under the sun. I'm going to have the best time ever. But I don't necessarily care about gear, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not someone who's like, oh God, this guitar it doesn't have the right tuning pegs. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to be able to get the sound I want without that different bridge. You know what I mean? I don't care about that stuff. You put it in my hands. Sure. It's great. I love it. I'll if I can have a collection of 100 guitars one day, I'll be all over it. But give me one guitar that's passable and the stuff I can record with, and I'll be happy.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you just have to acknowledge that, you know, different guitars, different gear just bring out maybe just slightly different sides of you, because they sort of force you to play differently, even if they're exactly the same. A guitar that looks different in terms of color will also bring a different side out of you. So you just have to work with what you have and then just create something with it, rather than that endless search, which is fun. But then it's not always the best thing to do, because it kind of gives you an excuse to keep on going down that rabbit hole while you should be actually focusing on writing music.
Totally.
Nice. Okay, well, so the hour's almost up, so let's end with this part where you know, we usually ask for advice. So obviously, and what sort of advice do you guys have for people to, you know, who aspire to achieve what you guys have achieved musically? You can cover anything from writing to gear or life as a musician, or even compare to like how you guys would do it if you guys weren't full-time musicians, because obviously you guys are doing this like full-time, but that's not really the case with most of the people, and most of the people who are fans of yours. So what sort of advice would you give them if they aspire to sort of achieve what you've achieved musically?
I can go first. I'd say keep it fun at all costs. So I would say don't force yourself to write something because you feel like that's what you should be doing to get results. Like, yes, there is an element of like actually doing the work, but I think ultimately if you keep it fun, you're going to have an extended career because you're going to enjoy it. And the more you enjoy something, the more you're going to do it and the better you're going to get at it. And it's going to be a win-win for so many reasons. So I would just keep it fun. If you feel like you're forcing yourself to write and you're not really in the mood, I don't see how you're going to get good results out of that session. So I wouldn't stress it. And don't feel guilty about doing other things and non-music related things. I think that's important. And all those experiences are going to, contribute to your expression. And even sometimes, like I like to say, the most productive thing you can do right now is not do music, do something else, and let it fester in you. And then when you get that moment to sit down, you're excited to do the session, you're going to come up with fun stuff that you really love, and I think that's the most important thing I could want to share with people.
Yeah, I think echoing that a little bit is just like figure out what it is about this thing that you do love and focus on that. Like, I know people who are great at a lot of stuff, but have really found their thing that they love and they just do that constantly. Like, you look at someone like Simon, amazing bass player, he's an incredible writer, but he is clearly so passionate about mixing and producing and like that side of things that he's just done it nonstop for the last 15 years. So it's like, that's where he's found his passion, and that's what's made him able to have a career as a musician, by following that and not necessarily worrying too much about the other stuff outside of it. For me, my passion is probably composing, really, like creating the music from my head and putting it down somewhere. I don't have a passion for mixing, you know what I mean? So I'll do a little bit of stuff to get my demos to a passable point or whatever, but I'm gonna outsource that in the end anyway, because I know I'm not gonna have a fun time if I'm forcing myself to sit there and fiddle with compressors, because it's just not what I'm passionate about, you know what I mean? I'm gonna be much more productive if I focus on the things that I really enjoy doing and love doing, than if I try and force myself to be able to do things I have no care for at all, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's one thing. And I think the other thing that I would say is be realistic about what doing this full-time actually means, because some people will hear that we're doing this full-time and they'll go, oh, they put music out and they record music and their music gives them lots of money to live, you know what I mean? But for me, it's like, I consider myself to be a full-time educator and a part-time musician, you know what I mean? Like, I have found my full-time musical career by teaching, by doing one-on-one lessons and all that kind of stuff, and then having music as the thing that is my passion, and releasing music and touring as another thing that's great, obviously. But really, it wouldn't be possible for me to be full-time at the level I'm at just from my music and just from touring. And with Ro, it's like, Ro has a Patreon where he does a million different things every month, you know what I mean? As well as his music that comes in, and he's also got to be selling merch and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? All the different things you've got to really be willing to diversify and expand what you do to make it a full-time thing. It's not just, I want to get my music out so my music does well and then go on tour and live the rock star life. You know what I mean? For this niche and for people at our level, it really is about finding whatever way you can to do the thing you love and support yourself in some way. So yeah, being realistic about what full-time kind of means in this context is really useful, because it allows you to not go into it with expectations that might not have any chance of being met ever, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think now people realize that more and more. Like last time, I think maybe as a kid, I thought, oh, well, I mean, when I used to see children on Bodum, I'm like, oh, that's all they do, and that's, they make tons of money, by being musicians. And then growing after that, I grew up and I was like, oh no, actually, that's far from the reality. I think musicians have to do so much more than just write and release and tour in order to like really make it as a full-time musician.
Yeah, I saw an interesting thing from a digital artist on YouTube the other day, where someone asked him, how do you make a full-time living as an artist? And he said, I'm not a full-time artist. I don't make full-time money off my art. I make full-time money off my YouTube where I educate people. You know what I mean? So like a lot of the time, the people you see as professional, full-time whatevers are not actually making their money off the thing you think they are. It's a lot of the time about finding ways you can monetize your skills and the things you can provide to people, rather and allowing that to support that passion that you have. You know what I mean? And then hopefully, as you build, that passion will start to give back to you a little bit. But you've got to. It's a bad idea to jump out of your full-time job if you don't have the drive and willingness to do what Ro has done and like be constantly on top of everything he has to be on top of to make life possible. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely true.
I think it's probably important to know that like in this genre, like most people have other jobs, or yeah, exactly what you said. Like it's not making the music part is not going to be the most financially, sustaining part of the thing. There's so many parts to it. You got to have so many hats on, and you got to embrace spreadsheets and shit, and applying for grants and answering emails and whatever it is. So many other things. People would have no idea.
I'm sure. Yeah, it always looks easy on the surface, but then what people see is often what they see on social media or whatever media, but then what goes on behind the scenes, that often goes unnoticed, and people really don't see that side of things and the struggles and the frustrations and things like that.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, anyways, so thank you guys so much for sharing what you guys shared today, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time out to do this out of your busy schedules, even though you guys are in sort of like in a lockdown, but obviously it's still time committed to this, and I really appreciate it, and I'm sure your fans will appreciate it. This as well. So once again, thank you so much, guys. And it was a lovely talk. I had tons of fun. I hope you guys did too. And I'm looking forward to releasing this episode, and I'll keep you guys updated on when that will happen. That'll probably happen sometime in November, probably mid-ish, but I'll keep you guys posted on this. All right.
Awesome, man. Thanks a lot, man. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right. Cheers, guys. Bye.